When you're staring at a shelf of lab equipment and wondering whether a mini incubator is worth the desk space, the hesitation usually comes from two places. Will it actually keep my cultures stable? And am I overpaying for a unit I'll barely use? Those are exactly the questions I tried to answer before hitting record, because I've spent the last few weeks setting up a benchtop space and testing a few different models. The benchmark MyTemp Mini is the one that kept popping up in the forums, and I wanted to see if the hype translates to real-world reliability. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the core problem this incubator solves. In a small research lab, a teaching classroom, or even a serious hobbyist setup, you often need a controlled environment for a handful of dishes or flasks, not a full-size walk-in. The MyTemp Mini is a personal-sized unit just 13 by 14.5 inches, roughly the footprint of a small printer. Inside, it holds about 20 liters, enough for a few 2-liter bottles or a stack of petri dishes. That size makes it easy to tuck under a bench or place on a cart without crowding the workspace. The first thing I noticed after unpacking was the digital control panel. Unlike older analog knobs, this unit lets you dial in temperature and CO concentration with a few taps, and the readout stays visible on a backlit screen. For daily use, that means you can set it to 37°C and 5% CO, walk away, and come back to a stable environment, no guesswork. The dual-beam infrared sensor is the method it uses to monitor temperature, which is a step up from simple thermistor probes because it reads the air without needing direct contact. In practice, I found the temperature stayed within about 0.2 C of the set point after the first 30 minutes, which is plenty for most cell culture work. Now, let's consider who actually benefits from those features. If you're a university student running a semester-long project, a biotech startup that only needs to keep a few reactors going, or a high school teacher demonstrating microbial growth, the MyTemp Mini hits a sweet spot. The two stainless steel shelves give you flexibility. You can place a tray of agar plates on the lower shelf while keeping a 2-liter flask on the top, and the metal doesn't react with most chemicals you'd use. The ability to fit bottles up to 2L means you're not constantly limited to 500 milliliters culture tubes, which saves time when you have to scale up a small experiment. On the flip side, the unit isn't a universal solution. If you run a larger cell culture facility that needs to incubate dozens of flasks at once, the 20-liter capacity becomes a bottleneck quickly. The same goes for anyone who needs tight humidity control. The MyTemp Mini doesn't have a built-in humidifier, so you'll need to add a separate water tray and monitor condensation manually. I tried running a humidity-sensitive yeast culture and had to place a small petri dish of water inside. The level stayed decent, but you'll have to check it daily to avoid drying out. One practical concern that many buyers overlook is the initial warm-up time. Because the chamber is relatively small, it reaches the target temperature faster than a larger unit, but the CO injection system still needs a few minutes to saturate the space. In my routine, I programmed the incubator to start 15 minutes before I needed the cultures, and the CO level stabilized at the set point within that window. If you're on a tight schedule and need immediate readiness, you'll want to factor that short lead time into your workflow. Another subtle trade-off involves the infrared sensor's placement. The sensor sits on the ceiling of the chamber, which works well for a uniform air temperature, but if you stack heavy glassware on the top shelf, the heat from those containers can create a slight gradient. In my tests, the temperature difference between the top and bottom shelf was under 0.3 C, which didn't affect the growth of the bacterial strains I was monitoring. However, for highly temperature-sensitive processes like certain enzymatic reactions, you might want to rotate the flasks occasionally or keep the most critical samples on the lower shelf where the air circulates more freely. Let's talk durability. The stainless steel shelves feel solid, and the outer housing is a matte finished plastic that resists fingerprints. The unit is designed to sit on a bench, not be moved around daily, so if you anticipate frequent relocation, you'll need to be careful with the door latch. The door itself has a clear acrylic window, which lets you glance inside without opening it and disrupting the environment, a small convenience that saves a lot of time during routine checks. From a value perspective, the price point sits in the mid-range for benchtop incubators with digital control. You're not paying for a massive footprint, but you do get the core functionality, temperature, CO, and a decent amount of usable space. The real value comes from the combination of a compact design and the ability to handle 2-liter containers, which many cheaper units